The other day when I had Willie van der Zam on the air about education, I learned to my semi-literate astonishment that Shakespeare is censored in the schools because of his bawdy approach to certain aspects of everyday life. Debbie van der Gracht of the News did this piece for me.
Jack, you had a caller to the show yesterday morning who's convinced that the BC government is practicing censorship when it comes to Shakespeare in the high schools. And that woman was Suzanne Gerard, and I decided to come and talk to her to find out why she thinks that. How did you reach that conclusion?
My son came home with one of his English books, and he said, "Mom, there's something wrong with this book." And I read it, and he read it, and then we got my original Shakespeare, and we looked at it, and here they depleted a whole section out of it.
The government has chosen a cut version of the bard's famous tragedy, Macbeth, and thereby hangs our tale. The section that's deleted would make good discussion in what we used to call guidance class. It can be found in Act 2, Scene 3 of the play, in a discussion between a minor character called the Porter and Macduff. And it has to do with the various effects of intoxicants on human encounters of the obvious kind. In it, the Porter says, "Drink, sir, is a great provoker. Lechery, sir. It provokes the desire, but it takes away the performance. It persuades him and disheartens him, makes him stand to and not stand to."
When you start something like this, you're treading on really dangerous ground. When you start censoring things, that one person says, "This is what you're going to read, because I say so." No, that is not a democracy.
But in a sense, it is laundered Shakespeare.
Yes, it is, I suppose. And this has always happened. I suppose it's only as important as you want to make it. Some people will object to the fact that some of these lines aren't taken out, and someone will object to the fact that they aren't there. You can't win either way. You just have to make the best selection you can and hope that this will be suitable to a majority of people.
There was a book written about Shakespeare's body, and I think we can get carried away. I really do. Sure, he wrote bawdy jokes because the people of his time liked them, and so he filled his theaters. After all, he was a successful playwright. But I think, again, we can get carried away on that and feel that this is the essential Shakespeare, and it isn't.
Debbie van der Gracht is with me now. Debbie, one thing I've forgotten, maybe I didn't know. What grades did they read Shakespeare in?
10, 11, and 12. And they study an average of 3 plays.
Now, it's not that long since you went to high school compared to me, right?
Uh-huh, that's for sure.
Have you any memories of feeling that Shakespeare was censored then?
Not when I studied it. We had the Signet version, which was used right up until last year in the BC high schools. And that was the complete text.
Now, actually, do you think the mother had a legitimate complaint? Or do you think that in grades 10, 11, and 12, they shouldn't talk about these kind of national events, you might call them? What do you think?
Well, this is just my own personal opinion, but I think if you're going to study Shakespeare, you should study Shakespeare in its entirety.
Wonder if the same happens with other classics like Chaucer and whatnot.
I think it does, and Vic Wright, the teacher who we saw in the story, was saying that Chaucer is bawdy as well, but you don't read them for the bawdiness. But the teachers that I talked to seemed to think that it wasn't that big a deal that this passage was left out and whatever other passages were left out.
I suppose if it at least gives the youngsters a solid introduction to Shakespeare in 10, 11, and 12, it does a hell of a lot better than nothing.
Well, that's right, and their point in getting this particular edition that they're using now was because it's easy for kids to study. I mean, kids don't really like Shakespeare. They can't even understand him to begin with, right? 14th century to the 20th century, that's quite a generation gap. And this particular edition has Cole's notes right on the side, and that's why they chose it. But, you know, I remember when Cole's notes were illegal.
I don't even know what Cole's notes are.
Oh, Jack, that shows a generation gap between us, but they're just a simplified version.
Of the whole thing.
That's right.
That's the kind of thing I do when I'm preparing a story.
That's
anyway,
right.
Thank you very much, Ms.
You're
van der Gracht.
welcome.
And I trust you will give me the odd little special from your news hour duties to help brighten up the Webster show.
Whatever you'd like, Jack.
My thanks to Debbie van der Gracht. I'll be back after the break.